Welcome to the Exploring Unschooling podcast. I'm Pam Laricchia, longtime unschooling mom and author. Join me and my wonderful guests for interviews, information, and inspiration about unschooling and living joyfully with your family. You can find the episode show notes, your free introductory ebook, What is Unschooling, and lots more information at livingjoyfully.ca. And here's the show. Hello, everyone. I'm Pam Laricchia, and this is episode number 113 of the podcast. It's the 28th of February, 2018, as I record this intro. And my guest this week is Megan Valnes. Megan is an unschooling mom with 5 children, and we have so much fun diving deep into her deschooling experience. We talk about finding unschooling information in groups online, the parenting paradigm shifts we make as we embrace unschooling, her experience managing the diverse needs of 5 children, her favorite thing about unschooling right now, and lots more. As a personal update this week, my new book is out. Yay! I'm so happy to finally be able to share this 3-year-long project with you. It's called The Unschooling Journey, a Field Guide, and here's the description. You are the hero of your story. What story do you want to tell about being a parent? Do you want something different for your family? Are you ready to answer the call to unschooling? Inspired by Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey framework, The Unschooling Journey is a weave of myths, contemporary stories, and tales from my journey. It's not a how-to book. No two paths through the world of unschooling have the same twists and turns. Yet, having a general sense of where you are on your journey can bring valuable insight as you navigate the challenges that will inevitably appear. I share this book as a field guide to the stages and characters you are likely to encounter in some form on your unschooling journey. Characters such as the heralds and guides who call us forward and help us choose our next step. The tricksters and monsters who are determined to confuse and scare us at every turn. And the gods and goddesses who shake us to the core and inspire our inner journey until, at last, we capture the holy grail of our quest, unschooling with confidence and grace. In the unschooling journey, you'll discover the value of approaching your journey with insatiable curiosity, how living and learning weave together to create a meaningful tapestry of lifelong learning and joy, the hidden depths of self-awareness for ourselves and our children that come when we move away from control as a parenting tool, the profound impact of judgment and shame, and how to find your way to kindness and compassion with your children. That unschooling, like life, is a practice, and there is real magic in its messiness. The book also includes 10 beautiful illustrations by Hema Bardwaj, an unschooling parent herself, created specifically to visually reflect the inner journey we are taking as we embrace unschooling. And the print edition is also a journal with plenty of room to document your journey along the way. Hema's illustrations are printed full page for you to color as you contemplate your journey. There are lined pages for writing down your experiences and clarifying your thoughts, and even blank pages for doodling and sketching. Together, let's explore your unschooling journey. So to check out the book, you can go to books2read.com/unschooling journey, or just search for it on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, etc. And also this week, I had a wonderful conversation with Rachel Rainbolt on her Sage Family podcast. It was really fun to be on the receiving end of questions for a change, and she had some really great questions for us to discuss. I think you'll really enjoy our conversation, and I'll put the link in the show notes for you. And a huge thank you to everyone who has chosen to support the show on Patreon. I deeply appreciate all my patrons and their generous support. It's vital to helping me share unschooling information and inspiration with anyone who wants to explore the fascinating world of unschooling. If you'd like to support the show, even for as little as $1 a month, check out the Exploring Unschooling page at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/exploring unschooling. And this week's quote is from Megan. Unschooling is a simple philosophy that when you read it, you're like, oh yes, that makes so much sense. But to actually implement it and fully integrate that philosophy into your life, it's so different because it radically contradicts what we grew up knowing and understanding about the world. It's like suddenly 4 plus 4 does not equal 8. Or there's a possibility it might equal 9. Is it possible to stretch your brain out that far? Where you can think, is it a possibility what I've been doing all these years was not right? I just loved how she described that moment when we recognize the difference between intellectually understanding the principles of unschooling and actually bringing it into our lives and living it. Suddenly, 4 plus 4 doesn't equal 8. That's kind of it in a nutshell, isn't it? And I just love the serendipitous connection with my book, The Unschooling Journey, which is all about the journey we take as we bring unschooling into our lives and fully embrace the lifestyle as a practice. Gives me goosebumps. Anyway, now on to my conversation with Megan. Hi everyone, I'm Pam Laricchia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Megan Valnes. Hi Megan.
Hi Pam.
Hello.
Very excited.
Oh, I am too, because one of the joys of hosting your own podcast is that when you come across interesting unschooling families online, you get the opportunity to invite them on the show and speak with them in person. Yay.
I know, it's so cool.
So I am really looking forward to chatting with Megan. And to get us started, can you share with us a bit about you and your family?
Yes, so we're a family of 7. We live in Los Angeles, and the 7 is 2 adults, 5 kids. My kids.
For my birthday.
Oh, there's one of them. That's my 3-year-old. We have a 3, 6, 9, 11, and 13.
Wow.
And we really enjoy being together as a family. We spend pretty much all of our time together, I think, like most unschoolers. Mm-hmm. And I think on a whole, we're a funny bunch. We love to laugh. We're just kind of lighthearted, and we really love traveling and exploring and animals. We love to accumulate animals, and we just have a lot of fun.
That's
We do the beach, we game, we farm, we pretend, all of it.
All of
Give
that.
me all you have.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Well, then, I'm curious how you actually discovered unschooling and what your family's move to unschooling looked like.
Okay, so we came across unschooling out of desperation. Mm-hmm. We were a very traditional family. It's really weird because I've always been a little alternative in myself, but when I became a mother, it's almost like I had this persona of motherhood and what I thought being a mother looked like or what we should do. And so my husband is a very free spirit, but he just sort of went along with what I did because I'm bossy like that. And so we put our 2 oldest kids went to school. They went to Catholic school, and it was like rigorous education, year ahead learning, all these things that I really believed were important. And so at 8 years old, he had really had enough. And he just flat wouldn't go. And at the time I was working. My husband and I have a business together. Well, I don't really work anymore, but at the time we were running our business together, real estate brokerage in Santa Monica, California. And so I was working at the time, and my son, I would drop him off at school and my daughter, and he just literally wouldn't go. He would walk in the building and he would sit on the stairs, and it was a really small school, like 1 class per grade and just, not a big place. So he would sit on the stairs, or say he was sick, so I would have to come and get him. And now this, this just didn't come out of nowhere, him sitting on the stairs. There was a lot that led up to it. He had really been unhappy for a long time. And I used to think that, he was having a lot of problems. Now, with my unschooling education, basically, I now know that it was always my problem. And it was never my son. But at the time, I was just so overwhelmed, and I just couldn't figure out, I thought I was doing everything right and really by the book as far as being a parent and trying to give him a different experience than I had growing up. And I thought it was better, but I never took him into account. You see, I never saw him for who he was. I saw studies and articles and, okay, this parent's doing that and that parent's doing that, and I want you to reflect me. So you need to be all of these things. And I never saw him. So he was just basically very unhappy by the time he was 8 years old. I mean, you could call him depressed. He would come home after school. He would go to his room. He wasn't happy. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't interacting with the other kids or with my husband and I. And so finally, I just thought, something has to drastically change here, or I'm going to lose my son. Because I knew from my own childhood and adolescent experience that by the time I was 13 or 14, I was out. I couldn't be controlled any longer, and I was going to go do what I wanted with who I wanted, and those weren't necessarily good things. And so I didn't want to lose my son to drugs or a bad path and bad friends who were doing questionable things. I wanted to keep my relationship with him. I finally realized that. And so I was just searching for different schooling options, because I always thought homeschooling meant, you bring your kids home and you do school. And I knew enough to know that that would not work for my son and me. We already had enough issues and tension between us that becoming his teacher would just have been a terrible idea. So in my search, I feel really blessed that I came across Sandra Dodd's website. And I still remember the moment I saw it, and I clicked on it, and this whole new world was opened up to me. And it was like the clouds parted and the angels sang and the beam of light shined down upon me. And it was just this awakening. I mean, I was lying in bed and I looked at my husband and I was like, oh my God, we have to do this. And that's my personality, right? To go from Catholic school, very rigorous, very regimented, to reading about unschooling, to being like, this is it. We're dropping everything. Let's go. And I really needed to heed her famous little saying, read a little, try a little, wait a while, watch. But I didn't understand that at the time. Yeah. I read it. I read the words, but I didn't know what that meant really. And so her website actually led me to your website, which then I joined the Unschooling series, those emails that you send out.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I put my husband on that, and that's really how we found Unschooling. And so I wrapped up one last project. I picked my son up from school one day, and we had been talking about it. I read about Unschooling probably a full year before we actually were able to pull the kids out of school. And so just kind of started implementing little things at a time, okay, I'm going to free up. I was very restrictive about food, about everything. And so I started letting go of those restrictions, and then picked my son up from school one day and said, you're not going back. We're ready. And that was the beginning.
Did he know about it beforehand?
He did. We had talked about, he knew about unschooling because he recognized that we were changing. Some of, okay, I was allowing more TV or more video games. I mean, I think my oldest son really suffered the most through my old parenting style. So it was a big relief for him just to have even some of the concessions from me. And then...
So it was just kind of working its way towards this. as you
Right.
were getting other things settled and organized.
Right,
To be able
because
to have them home. Yeah.
Exactly. Because I knew, I had to kind of phase out of working and get prepared and so we did that, and there were little steps along the way. But in some ways we sort of dove in also, because it's a big difference when you're making those little changes but they're still in school.
Yeah.
And then when you finally bring them home and it really happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, I think, where the big learning curve happened.
Well, speaking of learning curve, and I will say I had the same experience, because I didn't know about homeschooling when the kids were home. We're at school, and it was like that moment where there was that revelation that it didn't have to be that way.
Right. It's so freeing.
Hearted. It's like, wow.
It's like someone unlocked the shackles you didn't even know you were wearing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So after we've chosen unschooling for our family, the learning doesn't stop there, does it? That's what we were talking about, because you see those pieces.
Oh my gosh.
But they make sense to you, like the words, like you were talking about the words, but they don't really have meaning for us yet. We're just getting started. And while the growing amount of information about unschooling available to us now is awesome, it also means more sifting to find the sources with solid information that connects with us, that makes sense to us, right? So I was wondering how you found that process unfolding for you.
Well, I have to say I do feel incredibly fortunate that the first website I did find was Sandra Dodd's, which led me to yours and to Amy Child's, and that at the time that I found Unschooling, it was sort of right on the cusp of the whole Facebook wave. So there was that group Always Learning on Yahoo, which is still alive, but it was much more active when I first came to Unschooling. And because once you start, the learning is just starting. The ways that the mind opens, I didn't even know were possible. I didn't know parts of this thought process existed. It's a really profound philosophy, I think, radical unschooling. And so at the beginning, we decided, that we were not just going to be unschoolers, but radical unschoolers. Just felt more natural, I guess, for us. And so I think now, with all the information there is to sift through, the first thing I would think would be to find out where you really fall on the spectrum of unschooling, which now there's the spectrum, right? Some people just use it towards education. Others, like us, it's a whole life philosophy. And then when you go to those discussions, for myself, it is so important to remember to keep an open mind, because when I was on Always Learning a lot in the beginning, I thought I had a really open mind, but then I realized how actually narrow-minded I was. And I thought, I was like, I get it all. And there was so much I didn't get. And the biggest thing is that we don't even realize we have is all this narrow-mindedness around our core beliefs, right? And so people challenge those, and it's just natural to become defensive and feel attacked, because these are things that we just believe to be true unequivocally. That's it. Yeah. And so when we start finding out they're not, it's hard to deal with. I think that it's confusing, and then it can be painful, for the parent. And that's hard sometimes, to sit with yourself and really look at yourself and why you do things, and see those things all become more apparent the longer you are in school. Because like you said, so when the kids were in school and we could start, lifting restrictions off certain things, that was fine. But when I brought my kids home, my oldest son, who had the most healing to do, he had been in school the longest, and it was really ultra damaging for his personality. Some kids, I think they, like myself, I went to school. I don't really think it affected, of course, it boxed my mind in certain ways, but I wasn't terribly unhappy in school.
Yeah.
I liked my teachers. I had friends, whatever. but for my son, it was just really, really bad. And he wasn't bullied, and he had a ton of friends, and he did well. He just hated it. I don't know how else to say it.
Yep.
So, sorry, I sort of went on a tangent there.
That's okay.
But so when we brought him home, all of a sudden my son was watching television. I'm not kidding. Almost 24 hours a day, maybe 18 hours a day. He would sleep on the couch in front of the television. He would eat all his meals watching the TV. And so now I had allowed this. Okay. So every now and again I would blow up, because in the beginning we still are who we are. We can't just change poof overnight. So I would still get really angry. And then I would realize, you know what? I'm allowing him to do this, so I can't be mad at him. Why am I feeling so uncomfortable with him watching TV? What is it about that that's making me feel this way and making me actually feel angry? You know, what's at the root of that anger? And so when we start asking ourselves those really challenging questions, I think it's important to have a group that can really help you sort through those answers and not just tell you, oh, it's okay. You're an angry mom, and we all have those days. Like, I don't want that. You know, there's certain times I want to be coddled, and I know who to go to be coddled. But when we're really getting down into the depths of unschooling, I think it's important to have a group that can really help you work through that and has the courage to say things that will open your mind or shift your perspective. And that was another thing I really found on the Always Learning list. Was Sandra Dodd talks a lot about shifting your perspective, which is something else that I think the words are easy to read, but to really do it takes time and practice. And so that's a big part of unschooling, is to continually involve yourself somehow in the discussion. And the discussion is going on everywhere. So make sure that the discussion's challenging you, and find, like, I have a couple really good unschooling friends, and I can go to them with anything, you know, and know that they're going to be truthful and honest with me. And they are sort of in the same philosophy I am. Now, everyone's going to relate to people differently, right?
Yeah.
I love Ann Ohman. She's very different than other voices in unschooling. So there's all these different voices out there. And I think, so one, you have to find who you connect with, whoever that may be, who you can hear the best. And then make sure that, for myself, it was just try not to walk away just because I got offended, because there were times where, you know, I felt almost like my feelings were hurt. You know, I would write in and I'd be like, well, I didn't really want you to tell me the truth about it. But, you know, and then I would hear those words, and it was just important to step away from the discussion for a little while and think is
Yeah, and so much.
Which is hard online, because that is the other thing online, is that you get to have rapid response, and you need to say what you need to say right now, or else it's all irrelevant, you know, because it just changes so quickly. So I think it's a good tool, and it helps strengthen some other unschooling tools when you can just step away and think, let it percolate.
Yeah, because there's just so much value in that, like you said, not just for that moment, but for the process in general, and that process in life. So many great points in there. It's so funny because I had written out things, you know, what I was going to say, and then I find it sounds kind of unnatural when I read it, so I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff, but being that sense. It is that openness. That is such a huge point, because this is something that's unconventional. And, you know, we have absorbed growing up so many conventional messages that, like you said, we don't yet know what so much is going to be challenged. It is. Right. So being open to just consider, just even if it's just asking yourself, what if? Right. What if maybe that's true? Exactly. You know, it doesn't have to be this like, you're wrong, this is right. It's not. Exactly. It's like bringing ideas for you to consider and contemplate. And that is the reason why was I going to say? It's so important to find the voices that connect and say things the way that connect with you, right?
Exactly.
So that you can be open, because if you're feeling defensive too often, you don't bring them in, right? But if you don't consider them, if you just get the pat on the back and say, oh no, it's okay, they can watch all the TV they want. And if you just leave it there, that is always going to come up for you over and over until you work through it, right?
Right.
You need to do the work.
you need to do the work. And it's exactly like you said, opening your mind to the possibility, because unschooling is another simple philosophy that when you read it, you're like, oh yeah,
that makes sense.
That makes so much sense. But to actually implement it and fully integrate that philosophy into your life, it's so different, because it just radically contradicts what we grew up knowing and understanding about the world, at least for me,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like suddenly 4 plus 4 doesn't equal 8.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a possibility it might equal 9. Is it possible to stretch your brain out that far, where you can think, oh, it's a possibility what I've been doing all these years wasn't right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that was a big piece. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big piece. And I know with my son with the TV thing, I would write in and Joy Federal responded to me on one, and I'll never forget this because it just made so much sense for me. She said, if your son had 2 broken legs, would you be yelling at him to get up and go running?
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like, oh my God, that made perfect sense to me. He's broken somehow inside. I may not be able to see it, and I may not be able to see what's going on inside his brain as he watches all that TV. And a lot of times he'd watch the same show over and over. And Pam, I just didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing? Why are you just sitting there? You're not in school anymore. Go outside,
do
play.
everything.
Yeah, come do a craft with me. Let's bake, play, let's explore. Let's look at rocks. Look at all the birds. Let's play with ice. And he wanted to just sit and watch TV. And it was making me feel bad about myself, because in the end, it was about me not feeling like an adequate parent. Yeah. Right? I was doing something wrong. So I couldn't see everything that was going on inside of him. And when I wrote that, it just made some Joyce. I'm sorry. Did I say Joy Federal? Joyce. Sorry. Mom brain. Okay. I can barely remember my kids' names, but when she wrote that, it just all kind of made sense. And I thought, okay, I can't see it, but I'm just going to trust it, because there's also there's kind of a big component of trust and faith in the unschooling process as well.
There is, because you need that.
Yeah. You
definitely need it. It's funny for me, the idea of trust shifted. So in the beginning, I needed to kind of trust, what the experienced longer term unschoolers and stuff were telling me, and unschooling parents were telling me, so that I could give things enough space to happen. So that I would then gain the experience and see 6 months down the road, I could look back and see, oh yeah, see, that did happen that way. But you have to find trust or faith somewhere to let those 6 to 12 months unfold first.
Exactly.
So that you can, then you gain your own experience, right?
Right, exactly. And which is hard, because we're doing something very different than most everyone around us. And we're used to wanting studies, right? We want studies, evidence, facts. Give me the pie graph on that. How many unschoolers are going to college? You know what I mean?
And we're used to productivity and fast, and this should be fixed by next week.
Right. And do you fall within the regular learning curve of everyone else? 4 to 6 age ranges. So it's just such a leap of faith in some ways, where you can, when you really read it and start to understand it, you finally do know on an intellectual level, yes, learning is natural to humans. That's what we do. We've come a long way, baby. I mean, look at where we started as bipedal primates, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. And I'm just so happy that we found it. It's truly been life-changing.
Yeah. Oh, I know. So, and another important aspect of this deschooling process revolves around parenting, and it lines up a lot with what you were talking about with your son, because it turns out that helping our children's learning thrive and just helping them thrive as individuals means shifting our parenting paradigm, right? From having control over our children, right? Even if it's just wishing that they, I wish he would get up and play and do all these wonderful things that we can now do because he's home, to being in connection with our children, right? To starting to understand their perspective, and that huge piece that you talked about, you mentioned it, but I think it's a huge piece, is that judging ourselves or seeing ourselves from what our children are choosing to do, right?
Yes.
So I was just wondering if you could talk a bit about what that shift has looked like for you.
Yes. So that piece about the reflection of our children, or our children being a reflection of us, it's so cultural, and so that's something in our paradigm. That's one of those things for myself I didn't even realize I was doing. Mm-hmm. But I was like doing it overtime. So
I know that.
I was working overtime on that one. Before unschooling, that was just a completely foreign thought to me, I think. I never really thought about it. I grew up with parents that loved me very much but didn't really play with me, and it was never expected that they would play with me.
Yeah.
That just wasn't their role, I grew up thinking being a good parent meant you kept your kids clean and like nice looking, you educated them, they had manners, and you didn't really need to play with them. So with my oldest, I didn't, it's so regretful to think about it now, but I didn't really play with him when he was little. And God, one of my biggest regrets is I sleep trained him. Which I went to, I was 22 years old when I had my oldest son. I was kind of a baby. Now that I'm older, I'm like, oh my God, I really was young. And I never thought about it. I never even thought about the fact that I was young to have a baby. For me, I had always wanted children, and I wanted children young, and the women in my family tend to have children young. So to me, that was just normal. And so anyways, I was 22 years old when I had him, and I just really wanted to do everything right. I truly believed what I was doing was the best thing for him. And my husband hated that I sleep trained him and would always just want to, bring him in with us. And he was probably 12 weeks old when I did that. And so I still nursed him for a long time. But that right there disconnected me from my son. Putting him in a crib and letting him cry to sleep was a huge disconnection for us. And I never did it again with any of my other children because I knew innately it was wrong in my gut. But at the time, at that age, I wasn't really able to even be connected to myself and my own intuition and my mother's intuition. I didn't trust myself enough to connect with myself. And therefore, how could I connect with my children on that level? Which is another huge part of the trust component in unschooling. And I forget who said, John Holt says, we're raised our whole lives as children believing we can't be trusted. So it's no wonder we turn into adults that don't trust ourselves. And then again, don't trust our children. And then, so it's just this like revolving cycle. So it has to stop somewhere, right? We've got to change it. And so being disconnected was what was normal for me. Yeah. And so when I came to unschooling and was starting to let go of all those controls, that led me to start learning more about myself and why I had those control issues over my children, and what did that mean for me? Like, how did I need to connect back into myself and connect with them? So connecting with them and really making the effort to play with them, to watch TV with them, to sit on the couch and watch my son's shows with him, to play their computer games, to really get into their world helped me heal. and helped me learn, I think, what a true connection means. And so that was just part of the work and the process of putting down all those thoughts and ideas and opinions that I thought were so right and shifting my perspective and trying something new. Because playing with my kids was really foreign to me. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, Pam, the weird thing is that I was only this kind of person parenting. I've always been, fun and a little bit crazy and a little bit wild, right? And wanting to do things, and I just have kind of a vivacious personality. It's who I am. But when it came to parenting, I would turn into this different person. Like I said, I had to put on this persona, and I sort of turned into what I thought was right, and it wasn't right. And
that's such a great point, though, because it's our chance to be good. Right? Like we said, we're seeing our value or our worth as a parent reflected through our children. Right. So that drives us to control them to be perfect. So that we can look perfect. Exactly. Because this is our shot. Right. Because we know what a good parent looks like. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Conventionally. So, when especially when you've bought into that whole paradigm, you're just really pulled to accomplish it, right? Yes. I know what you mean.
And always so worried about how other people are judging the situation. Because like for myself, I never really cared what people thought about me. But all of a sudden when I had kids, it was like, man, these kids need to be perfect. And people need to think that I'm doing a great job and know that I'm a fit parent, Yeah. And where does it, so...
that's why when you're shifting away from that control, you're like, now what, right? And like you said, you have to learn so much about yourself,
right?
So that you can even connect to somebody, because you can't really see. It's very hard to see from somebody else's perspective until you've got to start somewhere. You got to start with your own,
right? Exactly. And sometimes it's fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. I found, because in the beginning I didn't really understand what I was doing, but I did it anyway. I kind of went through the steps, and first off, it was just opening my mind to the fact that what my kids were watching on TV was really great. And was it funny? And can I get into it with them? And I could. And so it's just somewhere. Even if in my head I was thinking, oh my God, I can't believe we're watching this Barbie movie. And or whatever I was thinking in my head, I didn't say it out loud. It was also learning to control my mouth.
It's like 1,000,001 little shifts.
Yes.
At first. Every day. Like and every day it's like,
oh, sorry, go ahead. No, I'm just going to say sorry. I think as parents, we feel like it's our right to just unload our opinion on our kids.
Yeah.
In conventional parenting, do you notice that? Like, you'll tell your kid to be like, oh my God, your hair is a wreck, your breath stinks, go brush your teeth. Like, you would never say that to anyone else.
Yeah.
And somehow it's okay to say that to your children, right? And it's more conventional, so you hear it all around you. So becoming more mindful also is a huge part in connecting. Being more mindful of what you say and how you say it, and how are you treating these people that happen to be your children, who, by the way, didn't ask to be born. You brought them into this world.
All that ties together so nicely because it's all about being able to stop for that moment, right? And just contemplate, like not just react, not just say, oh, your hair or whatever. So what is, ooh, your hair, or ooh, this TV show or whatever. Just back to what we were talking about before, about just being open to those moments, just kind of passing by and just contemplating them for a little bit, and doing that shift over again. Oh, look, but we're having fun. We're watching this TV show for the 100th time. But we're having fun. We're laughing. It's this whole conversation that goes on in your head, isn't it?
Right. Yes. Exactly. And that's better, to learn that sometimes we just need to keep it in our head or talk to our friends about it, but we don't have to unload it on our kids.
Yeah,
Let them have their own experience.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Then that's part of the just staying back and observing a little bit.
Totally.
Like, you're with them and connecting, but you don't have to verbalize everything, right?
Right.
To see how they take it in. And I learned so much because they see things differently. And that was all part of my deschooling.
Yes.
To realize that the way they see things is just as valid.
It's almost even more valid because it's coming from a more pure perspective, I think. It doesn't come with all our baggage, right? Like, I had a lot of, in the beginning, I had a lot of opinions that were just weighed down by like all this baggage and my own experience and how I was really projecting this now onto my kids or onto their experience and not letting them just be an individual in the world doing something and having their unique experience with it. And that's even hard to understand, but it's, to allow them to be their own person, separate from us. Does that make sense?
Huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is huge. And it's so valuable for us to see it too, and it was seeing it so often, so many things on my unschooling journey and deschooling journey for myself have been because I saw them in my children.
Right.
It's
yes.
Like,
or they pointed
saw
out
this fresh.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is okay. Oh, so what do I really think about that?
Right. I mean, I'm learning from my kids all the time. And now, with my two older ones are 11 and 13, my 13-year-old is smarter than I am. I swear. And it's just so amazing. And I love hearing about his perspective. And I thank God that I found it at the time I did, because, 8 years old, that's not early in the game, kind of, when we're talking about children. And I'm just so happy I found it when I did, because now our relationship is so amazing. Like, we're so connected, and I don't have to control him anymore. I really can say that I trust him in what he's doing. And that is like a long time coming. I mean, that's probably been in the past year that I felt that way. And that's not saying everything's perfect, being in connection with your children and your family isn't saying that you never have an argument or get upset or have just issues. It's not always hunky-dory. But it means that we can really discuss issues when they happen. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess that's it, is when you say it's amazing, and it is, and you're so well connected. You worry that people think, it's all candy.
Yes. It's all rainbows and unicorns.
Lollipop rainbow. There you go. There's the phrase I was looking for. But no, it's that connection helps you. Like, even when there's issues and problems and people are worried and upset and everything, that connection is still there. So
yes.
It seems like you're working together.
And
so
it's so
it doesn't
important.
seem like
right.
bad.
Exactly.
Right?
And the connection is so important in those vulnerable times, because to be able to connect into our children when they're not doing their best, they're not feeling their best, even coming down to my 3-year-old, when she's throwing a tantrum or screaming and crying because her toy doesn't look the way she wants it to, I don't have to get upset and control her and make her feel good again. I can just be there with her, and let her be upset and help her as much as I can. And maybe with the 3-year-old, luckily we can kind of guide their attention elsewhere to something that maybe will make them happy, a lollipop. But, with my 13-year-old, when he's upset, I can be there with him too. I don't have to. It even comes down to controlling their feelings, because before, when maybe my kids would get upset, or sometimes we're just used to saying, it's okay. You're fine. You're fine.
Yeah.
Don't cry. We even want to control feelings. And so now with my 13-year-old, even if he's angry, if he's mad at me, I can let him have his anger and be mad, and I'm still connected to him. And it's even growing stronger in those moments, because then I can just be there for him as a support, and he knows that.
Yeah.
I think he knows I'm there, which is huge.
It is. It's huge. And yeah, no, it's just, it's wonderful, and it's so different, and it's okay. It's part of the detangling yourself from them, right? They are individuals with their own valid feelings, reactions, everything. And to let them see that it's such a fine line, isn't it? You say you let them have it, and if they're upset with me, that's okay and everything. And then you think, oh, well, do people think then it's just hands off, I just leave them alone and that's that? No. There's so much.
Yes. Yeah, that's the thing about unschooling is it's definitely not hands off. And it's learning what that means. Because, when you are in that traditional paradigm, it's kind of like all or nothing, I think, in our head. It's just everything's kind of black and white in the traditional paradigm of parenting. And when you get into unschooling, you realize that it's mostly a big, huge spectrum of gray. I think there's very little black and white. And that was really hard for me because I like things to be black and white. I have to tell you, my natural personality is more of a black and white personality because it helps me. I mean, human beings, we like patterns, right? Yes. We like symmetry and things to fit correctly.
Yep.
And so when things don't, it gets a little tricky. So learning that gray spectrum of, yes, I'm going to let him be angry at me, but no, it's not hands off in any way.
It's how to support them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
which is tricky because sometimes he tells me, go away.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to go away, but he still knows I love him, and I'll tell him. I say, okay, I'm gonna leave you alone, but I love you.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly,
and not taking it personally, really.
Yeah, exactly, because that's that connection and that trust underneath that. And the time aspect comes in there too, right? That this doesn't need to be solved right this instant.
Right, exactly.
I don't need you to be
exactly.
That advice to never go to bed angry.
Yeah, right.
It's always struck me a little off because we need our feelings and we need to process them in whatever time that it takes us. But to know that the other people are there for us. When we're ready to reach out.
Yeah.
Or ready to and then that's what we learn too is even if it's just body language to know that they're ready for us to come closer.
Right. Exactly. And he knows I'm there. I don't know if when I was 13 years old, I was allowed to be angry at my parents or yell at them without there being some kind of repercussion,
mm-hmm.
Some sort of consequence to whatever behavior. My son and all my kids know they can be angry and they can be upset. And that doesn't mean they're going to get in trouble later for it or I'm going to punish them for their feelings. They still know I'm there. Now, some things are unacceptable. Obviously, if my kid came up and hit me or hit another one of my kids, that's unacceptable, right? But even with that, it's still not, I'm going to punish you for that.
Yeah, because when they're upset, angry, anything, that's not fun for them.
No.
They're not doing it to piss you off or something. They are where they are. They're doing the best they can in that moment, and you're going to have opportunities to talk about that. Most likely not in the moment. You're supporting them and just helping them get through the upset in the moment.
Right.
But after, you can talk about how they got there, what was going on.
Yeah.
You can help them because they don't want that to happen again and again and again.
Exactly.
So you're still supporting them and helping them figure out ways for next time.
Absolutely. Right? And it's important to feel, I think for kids, it's really natural because you have to learn how to handle the big emotions. And so to really be able to do it in a safe space, to go through that little roller coaster ride and then it's okay. And then you can talk about it afterwards and grow from it and learn from it. That alone is going to set you up, I think, pretty
huge.
Well. Yeah.
Yeah. Because to even know, to be able to see the other side of it, right? To see that you can get through it, that there's another side that you can, make changes and just the whole experience of being able to go through it rather than it being the end of the world. Because
or
you get
meaning
older
something.
and you've never been able. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Or meaning something more than it is. Like when my son was in school, they wanted to say he had, it's called ODD. What is it? Obstinate, defiant.
Oppositional defiant disorder. Yes, I know.
Which is basically what it is. Really? Who came up with that? It's really a kid saying, when they told me that was one thing I never agreed with. They told me that, I laughed in their face. And I was so my son wants to say no? Like, what does that mean? We expect these children, so it doesn't have to mean anything. Like, your kid can get upset. It doesn't mean they're ODD. They can hop from subject to subject. It doesn't have to mean something. It can just be what it is in that moment. And it means they're human.
Exactly. And to be able to help them understand themselves.
Right.
Right? Isn't that just that's a gift that keeps on giving? That no matter what their personality is and who they want to be and all that kind of stuff, to be able to see them for who they are.
Right.
And love them.
Exactly.
Is like,
it's such a gift
for them. It is. Okay, so we should probably get on to the next
sorry.
question. No, that was an amazing conversation. Thank you. So speaking of personality, see what I did there?
I did. I like that. Very clever.
Thank you. With 5 children, I imagine there are a number of different personalities at play. So I was wondering if you could share your experience around finding ways to meet their diverse needs.
Yes, they are all so different. And that is what I find incredible. I feel really fortunate that I've been able to have these 5 kids. And I used to say, it's crazy how each kid is so different and they have the same parents. And somebody once said to me, they don't have the same parent because you are a different, or they don't have the same parents because you're a different parent with each child. And that could not be more true in my case, because if you look at the mother that I was and the fathers my husband was with Julian, and then the parents we are with our youngest, Clementine, and all in between, gosh, Clementine hit the jackpot. We did. I mean, we have just grown and evolved so much. And being able to do that with our children has been amazing. And meeting all their needs has been a learning and growing process. And in the beginning with unschooling, it was hard for me because I was still sort of stuck in everybody kind of should like what I like. If I like it, it must be fun, you guys. Don't you know that? Why wouldn't you want to go to the park day? And my oldest son is totally his own. I mean, all my kids are totally their own person, but he's always been much more introverted than my 3. Well, I've kind of got 3 extroverts and 2 introverts. And so my oldest and my 4th child are very introverted, as is my husband. And I'm more extroverted, if you haven't noticed. And I've got my 2 middle kids and then my youngest are more extroverted. And so I really had to learn that it's okay for them all to be different, and that my 2nd and 3rd child love doing classes. They want to try anything. They'll go to a park day. Anything I throw at them, they're usually willing to try it. My oldest hates classes. Ever since we pulled him out of school, he's tried a few classes here and there at my urging, because, in the beginning, when you first start unschooling, you're like, wow, look at all these classes. Let's sign one up for every day. And then we'll go to 12 park days a month, and we'll do, we're going to meet all these people. And it's that really didn't work for our family. And I kind of learned that quickly. And that was part of learning to trust my son and knowing that he knew what was best for him. He just doesn't like park days. And that was hard for me to understand in the beginning, because I thought, don't you want to make friends? And he was making a lot of friends online, but I was sort of discounting that. And so now how I meet their diverse needs really is by just, like we talked about before, connecting into each individual one and figuring out things that we can do that everyone will like, because there are those things that we all love. We love doing things as a family. So usually if it's all 7 of us, everybody's in.
Yeah.
Like we went to Knott's Berry Farm this past Sunday, which is an amusement park here, for my son's birthday. Any amusement parks everybody always wants to go to. We love traveling together. And when we travel, it's a really great time for us all to connect as a family. We just kind of do a lot of stuff together. You know, we go surfing or hiking or exploring or whatever, and everybody's game for that. But when we're at home, which is usual, my son really, he's sort of on the gamer schedule, the vampire schedule, which, you know, wakes up around 4 PM and then goes to bed at an undisclosed hour. I'm not really sure when it is, but I know it's late or early. And then when he really wants to do something, he does. But I'll go watch him play his video games if he wants, and he lets me know what he needs, right? Like he'll say, "Oh, I want to go to the mall." He likes going to the mall now. Or "I want to go get this game." So I think the biggest way of meeting needs is by staying connected to your kids and knowing who your kids are, which is huge, because there are certain things I know my oldest son and my 4th child, my 2 introverts, are not going to like. And so I always run everything past everyone, but I don't get offended or take it personally if they don't want to do it. And the option to say no is always available. And that's kind of how we are, you know. Right now, my younger son just got a Nintendo Switch for his birthday. And so that has been so much fun because everybody can play and we all love it. Yeah. So we're all playing Just Dance and it's hilarious. And, you know, they're all playing Mario Kart. So that's something, bringing all the kids together, except for Clementine. I mean, she stands there with a remote thinking she's playing, but she's not quite there yet. So that's it. I feel like, meeting needs is just really an extension of staying connected.
Yeah. Because then you know, and being okay with no. Right. That's the other huge piece. When you're connected, and then it's just figuring it out, isn't it? Just trying to see how you can weave all the different things together.
Yeah, it's just life, and it just really starts to flow. And I think whether you have 1 kid or you have 5, like, obviously the workload increases a little bit, I think, but you know, but whether it's not even, I think good unschooling, it hits a flow, and there are ebbs too. But what I've been discussing an ebb with a good friend of mine. We were talking about the ebbs, and she said something really beautiful, that, you know, during the ebbs, the tide is pulled away and there's all these unexpected treasures on the sand, on the beach that you can find, you know? And that made a lot of sense to me, because sometimes, like, we're all flowing so well and everything's going great. And then we feel like we start to ebb, and it's like, okay, what's going on? But taking that downtime, which is really kind of what it is, and looking for the treasure in it. Maybe everybody, you know, needed a break. I think we get so caught up, another cultural thing is getting caught up with being busy, because if we're busy, then we're worthy. You know, that means that we're productive human beings and we're worth our weight in gold. And gosh darn it, we're going to make the world a better place. And it's like, you know, sometimes being productive sometimes it's really okay, that downtime. Your brain needs it. Your body needs it. Kids absolutely need it. And they know how to give it to themselves naturally. You know?
Yes,
I'm still learning
They really do.
I'm learning how to give myself downtime. That has been another big piece that came with unschooling, which is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found that too. I mean, I love that, the treasures that you find in the quiet, because that's another piece, right? Giving yourself permission to be quiet and be saying, it's okay. We don't have to be doing all these things. They don't have to love park day.
Right.
You know, all those things, getting comfortable with those things.
We're still always learning, but through all of it.
Yeah.
You know?
So how has the transition to unschooling been for your husband? That'll be interesting, because you said he was a little more of a free spirit beforehand.
Yeah.
I was wondering what his experience or how you've seen his experience with this shift to unschooling.
Well, I've seen his experience, I think it came more naturally for him in some aspects because he hated school. Absolutely hated it. He's got no good memories of school. He ditched most of high school. He did not like it. And he never wanted the kids to go to school. He never liked the idea of sending them away, like for preschool. So the kids didn't go to preschool, but I was like, well, they're going to go to pre-K though, when therefore they've got to start early, pre-K. So, but he didn't like it ever, but he went along with it because what was the other option? Homeschooling. And like I said, I had always on some level wanted to keep my kids home with me too, but I didn't know about unschooling. I thought they had to go to school. I didn't really understand that was not an option, or that was an option. And so in that respect, my husband was, got it, I think, very easily. And he was always much more willing to say yes to, where like, I would get so upset if my kids ate McDonald's when they were little. And these are really just my oldest two. And, and my younger one, my son was 8 when we started. I guess she was 6. So she even had less of an experience. And I was more easygoing even with her than I was with my oldest. I was so rigid with my oldest. And I thought, oh my God, McDonald's, like they can't eat that, the sodium content, diabetes, like all these fear factors that I had from reading news and whatever. And I was just projecting everything out. He was always much more easygoing about those types of things, like letting them make decisions about what they wanted to eat or wear or play. But, like everyone else, he had his challenges with it. But we both really got into always learning together, that group. And he would read a lot. He wrote in once. That was interesting. And so we would read that, and we got, copy like your books and Sandra Dodd's books, and he would listen and to like the Amy Childs podcast because that was the only one around, I think, when we started. And so he learned in his own way as well. And then I had to, like, also, how unschooling can really apply to anyone in your life. I learned how to be different with my husband, and so there were times when I would just send him like tons of articles and read this and highlight this in a book and whatever. And that didn't really work because I felt like when I would push it on him, he would resist it. Yeah. Which goes back to kind of even hating school. I mean, my husband works for himself. He can't work for people. He doesn't want to be told what to do. So I had to learn too. And we both had our own process and we love it. I mean, now we're at the point where, we know not to really talk about it with other people. But, in the beginning when you're just so excited and you want to tell everybody, like, you got to unschool your kids, man. It's awesome. And then you soon realize, like, people just are like, what are you talking about? It's just such a hard, deep, but so in the beginning, I know he wanted to convert everyone. And now we've both just settled down and let it percolate through ourselves. We don't.
I know. I would say something, at those first few months, say something to my friends, and when we got the families together, and I just didn't understand why they weren't going, oh my God, how do you do that? And asking a million questions. They're like, oh, okay, and change the subject, right?
Because doesn't it seem so logical? Like when you read it, it's just like so logical. Like, okay, that makes perfect sense. Now I've got to go evangelize the world. People do.
Yeah, that's a stage.
Yeah, exactly. It quickly passes. You're like, okay, never mind.
But yeah, I mean, that was a huge revelation for me too, and I think it really did improve my relationship with Rocco, with my husband, because it just shows you how individual people are, right? And that when I realized that the control aspect with my children wasn't helping our relationship, I started to recognize how many ways I was trying to control him too.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And trying to get him to learn things the way I like to learn things.
Exactly.
You know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it really opened up that relationship too.
Makes for a much more peaceful household.
It really, really does. And now for our last question, I'm curious, what's your favorite thing about your unschooling lifestyle right now?
Oh my goodness, right now.
Right now. 'Cause I won't hold you to it 5 years from now.
Yeah, right, exactly. My favorite thing right now, it's got to be my relationship with my kids and my husband. And myself. It's just it has opened up so many doors, windows, worlds to me that I didn't know existed. It's just opened my mind on so many levels, and it's allowed me, I just didn't even know this could exist. Like, this kind of true family harmony and happiness is real. And I feel like the Velveteen Rabbit, you know, like I finally become real, and I don't, may not have any eyes, and my fluff's all kind of worn out and worn down, but I'm real, feel on such a deep level, and with my kids and with my husband. And I don't know what could be better.
Aw, that is so awesome. Thank you so much for speaking with me today, Megan. I really appreciate it. I loved it. Yay!
Yay, I hope I sounded coherent.
Oh,
my
absolutely.
mind was going like a million miles a minute. I love it.
I know that.
Because I love talking.
Yay.
Don't you just love talking? You're lucky you get to talk about unschooling all the time with all these great people. But, for myself, because I kind of do stay out of like the Facebook world and stuff, only because for me, I've found that it helps me to focus more on my family. And I guess that was part of like what I maybe should have gone into on the one question about sifting through sources, finding what works for you. Facebook is like too much for me, because I start responding and getting like all wrapped up in these other worlds, and it takes too much of my time at this point in my life. And so it's so great to just really have good conversation with somebody about this subject that I love to talk about, but I don't often get to do it.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. And so true, right? It's another thing that you see how it weaves into your life.
Exactly.
Most comfortably. And before we go, where is the best place for people to connect with you online?
Instagram.
Instagram.
Yes. I don't do Facebook, but I love Instagram. Instagram is I love it. It's lighthearted, and there's direct message. I'm on Facebook Messenger. I am on Facebook. If you go on, you'll find me. I'm on there, but I really never go on. So the best way to find me is through Messenger and Instagram at MomWifeSuperstar.
Yay! Oh, thank you so much, Megan. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you, Pam. It was such a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. I hope you found it helpful. You might also like the backlist episodes at livingjoyfully.ca/podcast. While you're there, be sure to pick up your free copy of my book, What is Unschooling? In it, we'll explore some of the common questions people have when they first hear about unschooling, like, how will my child learn? How do I know they're learning? What is deschooling? And how do I get started? It's also available at many online ebook retailers. And if you'd like to connect online, you can find me on Facebook at Living Joyfully. Until next time, have fun living and learning with your family.